I mean, that last bit was presumably music to your ears, because you're doing something which a lot of MPs are not doing, which is actually campaigning for, am I right, a closure of a hospital in your area.
I think I'm the only member of Parliament who's been doing. I've been doing it for 3 years in the Thames Valley. I mean, my constituency is Bracknell, but I've worked in the Thames Valley as a GP for almost 10 years, looked after about 50,000 patients, referred into a series of hospitals in the area. I've long thought we needed a more consolidated acute service on the M4 with, in support of this, more community hospital locations doing the chronic care. And so when I became, in fact, before I became a member of Parliament, as a candidate, I argued for it, and since I've been doing the same thing.
So that in effect means one big hospital,
yes,
and other ones which lose the right to do surgery, and so either will close or be a much diminished role, which probably doesn't make you Mr. Popularity.
I wouldn't say diminished, I would say changed. The majority of expenditure in the National Health Service is on chronic care. It's not on acute care. And most of that chronic care can be delivered closer to home. Indeed, with the advances of telemedicine, etc., it can be in the home, or it can be in the GP practice, or it can be in the community clinic.
But why don't you get the people campaigning? Because the impression is that a lot of MPs, responsive to the will of the people in their area,
yes,
say, do not close, do not change, we need all the services in our local hospital.
That's because in the past it was good politics to defend services that were, I would suggest, indefensible. Now I think it's good politics to save lives.
Although you're a bit of a lone voice.
At the moment, there are colleagues who share my view, but are reluctant because of the way in which you describe politics as being in the past.
Do you see the hospital system as being a bit of an anachronism? It's just grown up the way it's grown up, but in the 21st century, we need something different.
No, the hospital system has been planned. It's not been planned centrally from the start, from the beginning. It's grown up according to local need, with different specialties being provided in different places and different services being provided as needed. But it's most definitely not just there. It delivers an excellent service that we need to continue making better. And this research gives us a little bit of information about the sort of things that we need to do to continue improving care.
But what about the things that Phillip Lee was just talking about there, and that kind of way forward?
Well, the really important thing there is getting a balance between the local delivery of services, as Bruce was talking about, and the necessity to follow the evidence where it exists, to make sure that we're not actually not delivering below standard care for conditions where we can show that centralisation is best. But nevertheless, in other conditions, the clinical consensus, the clinical evidence may show that it's not necessary to centralise, and we can carry on delivering it everywhere.
What do you say to, because it's been in the papers particularly over the last 6 months, this view that parts of the NHS are run more for the benefit of those who work there rather than those of us who are patients? I mean, that's putting it bluntly.
I think that's something that anybody in any workplace has to think about all the time. Are you actually serving the people who are using your service as best you can? In our case,
you're not at
the
weekends.
NHS.
That's the argument, isn't it?
The NHS has had a mode of working that obviously mirrors what happens in the rest of society. Now, in the intro, we talked about, or rather you talked about, the supermarkets being open all day at weekends. Of course, the NHS isn't just open all day, it's open all day and all night, and takes people whatever their need, whatever the time they present.
So what do you think of 7-day working?
I'm in favour of 7-day working, but I recognise in order to deliver that, you need fewer sites. Because if people like Mark are going to have a life outside of work, you can't have a long list of district general hospitals in which you're expecting consultants to work 7 days a week. If you had a consolidated service, as it appears to be the case in Southampton as a teaching hospital, you can have more consultants, and in which case those consultants only do so many weekends in a year. So in order to deliver 7 days care, which actually would address to a great extent the figures that have come out today, you need fewer acute surgical sites. That's my conclusion.
Do you accept that?
I think in some specialties the evidence points in that direction. The real key thing about reconfiguration is to follow the evidence. Where it can be shown that the centralising and specialising helps, then do so, but that doesn't mean that we must move to a simple system of solitary super hospitals across the country. That wouldn't be serving the population well.
Let me bring in Sir Bruce again. I hope the line's been properly re-established, Sir Bruce. But, you know, this comes, the political context of this is we've had in the last 6 months or so the Mid-Staff's report. We've had reports suggesting that nurses should care a little more for their patients. GPs are not prepared to work out of hours. A&E facilities are stretched, and so on, and so on, and so on. I mean, the politics sound as if we as patients are being a bit softened up for some very, very big changes which we might not like.
You know, the NHS is owned by the people and is there to serve the people, and rightly there will be very vigorous debate about the direction of travel for the NHS over the next few years. You know, all healthcare systems are in the grip of a triple pincer of increasing costs, escalating demand, and a tight fiscal environment. And those three things can be very difficult to balance. But what it does do is it provides an impetus for us to focus on new and different ways of delivering services. And I believe that with appropriate public debate and the intellectual capital that resides within the 1.4 million people who work in the NHS, that we can solve this problem for the benefit of all.
Phillip Lee, you have not blamed the staff, but some people have, and the implication of some of these reports has been to do so. And I'm just wondering if the basis of the reforms is trust the staff more, give the clinicians more power, how does that square with some of these reports which seem to undermine the confidence and have really irritated quite a few doctors?
Well, I think
and nurses
I think
and
the
others.
reforms that were put through 2 years ago by the coalition government were more about trusting primary care physicians to deliver the care and to be able to construct services to suit their patients. So I don't think it was necessarily about hospital consultants in that terminology.
But GPs, as you know, got it in the neck last week.
But what I really must emphasise is that all I'm interested in is clinical outcomes, the best clinical outcomes. And I am not convinced, in fact, I'm just not convinced that we have the structure, the hospitals, the clinics in place in order to deliver the best clinical outcomes.
OK, thank you all very much. Thank you.